Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson and I would like to welcome you to this show. For those of you who are new to the Umoja Circle, this is an African-centered talk show where our purpose is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction about who we are as people of African descent. There's a lot of people who have ideas about who we are and those from a peripheral view. We are African-centered, and we speak our cultural truths from the inside out. So you have a better picture of why we do the things we do and who we are as people. In this world today, the media tends to get things wrong, and sometimes they tend to get things wrong deliberately. So I created this show. This will be the 27th year. 26 to 27 years. After 20 years, I kind of lose track. But I have a special guest today. Of those 26 years of doing the Umoja Circle, there was a person that was always on as my co-pilot doing this show. And he was on a sabbatical for a number of years because he kind of fits what this topic is going to be about, Black economics. And he is an entrepreneur in his own right. He's a restaurateur. He's owned a number of rental properties. He is a community activist, a very busy man. And for 14 years, he's taken time out of his busy schedule to help me in discussions that are important to the people of African descent. So I would like to welcome back, and this is his first time back in many years, in a few years, the brother Derek Williams. Welcome.
Hello, brother Smokey.
Good to see you, man.
Oh, I'm telling you.
It feels right that we're sitting next to each other on this show.
Without a doubt, I'm tickled brown to be here. Okay, and
I miss a little statement. Today, I want to let people know that, like I said, he's the best. One of the reasons that I'm glad that he's here, being that he is an entrepreneur. Again, our topic is Black economics, and I couldn't think of anybody better to have this discussion with than Derek. And we're going to base our reading about discussion. I'll put an image of this great scholar, and his name is Dr. Claude Anderson, and he wrote two seminal works that both of us have studied. The first book, Black Labor, White Wealth. We'll put that up there to show the books that we're going to be basing our discussion on. This is his first book. And in fact, this is the book that he established his Harvest Institute. People don't think that we have Black think tanks, Black research institutions, but we do. And this is one of the results by this great scholar, Dr. Claude Anderson. He is what we would call a Black business visionary. He had this image of Black economics,
Absolutely.
and he's dedicated the majority of his life to giving us information in order to empower us to do better in this capitalist system. And we thought it would be a good idea to talk about, first introduce him to those of you who might not know who he is. And for those who have come across his works, to reintroduce you to him. But let me give you a little background on him. He's just not haphazard. I got a copy of one of his books here. Derek got the other one. Everything that, Powernomics is the latest one. It came out in 2000 and I think 2000. And it's one of his seminal works. And the other one that I'm going to start the first half. Thank you. The first half of this discussion, because we're going to do a two-part discussion, will be based on the first book that he wrote, which is Black Labor, White Wealth. Now he also started out in the 70s working for the governor of Florida. He was the state coordinator of education for the Florida governor, then Reuben Askew, during the early 70s. He also worked in the Carter administration as a co-commissioner that upheld and composed financial headway projects for all the states. So when he talks about economics, he's talking from experience. He was inside the system. He saw how the system worked, and he also saw how it did not work for people of African descent. And he's also a historian. Thus the book, Black Labor, White Wealth. And the first half of the show, again, I'm going to take because in that book, there is a lot of statistics and documentation to back everything up. And he uses the history to validate what he's talking about. So with that, I want to start out with a statement. Do you have anything to say about Dr. Claude Anderson,
Yes.
Brother Williams?
His paranomic principles, I have done my best to incorporate many of those in what I have done. Dr. Claude Anderson could be considered the Harriet Tubman for us in terms of economics. My admiration for him is the dedication that is obvious in terms of his love for black people, people of African descent. And he is indeed one to follow. His Harvest Institute, with the think tank, the people that he has been surrounded with, has definitely made him one to go to on the topic of black economics. So, and he's also, I believe, an ex-Marine. Okay.
Yeah.
He put a number of years in the military. So you're right. You're absolutely right. He is a person of experience, and I believe that any philosophy, any concept, needs an experiential base as well.
He believed that we have this social illusion that we've made it. If you listen to a lot of the discussions that are being out there in the media, it's like black people were freed in the 1860s, and then they had a little bump in the road called segregation. Then miraculously, Martin Luther King came along, and he said we had a dream. And then for the last 50, almost 60 years, we've been moving forward, progressing, but yet we're still at the bottom of the list economically,
absolutely,
health-wise,
absolutely,
in many different social type of listings, we're at the bottom. So it's either that there is something wrong with us genetically, and during the later part of the 1800s with the Darwinism, and they tried to say that there was something wrong with us genetically, which is BS.
That's true.
Or is there something in the system that is working against black people? And Dr. That book, Black Labor, White Wealth, puts it into context why we are in the situation that we are.
It does put it in the context, and he explodes many of those myths that you pointed out. And when you don't study something, you can be taught anything, okay? And the conditions that he speaks to are basically responsible for what we see today. And what I like about Dr. Claude Anderson is that he recognizes that most of our time has been spent in looking at symptomatic issues.
Exactly.
He is definitely an expert in looking at the causative factors. Okay.
Yep.
And that is also a mechanism that is used, a diversionary mechanism in looking at behavior and not looking at the cause of the behavior. But Dr. Claude Anderson plainly and painstakingly identifies all of those factors,
The causations, yeah.
that contributed to this system to make us a permanent underclass. And he has no qualms in calling it the way it needs to be called.
Oh, he's very straightforward. If you listen to any of his lectures, because he loves his people. I saw him one time in the lecture, where he cried because he was so hurt by what he saw through his research.
Yes.
He does the numbers.
Yes.
Not the mythology.
Yes.
That make you feel good.
Yes.
And what he does is go back, do the research, and see how things. There's an old saying that I came across many years ago, that in order to understand the present, you must understand the precedent.
That's
and
right.
Precedent means what came before. You cannot understand economically why we're having issues as people of African descent in ownership.
Yes.
That we spend $1.3 trillion
Yes.
every year annually, but we don't own anything, but basically.
Yes.
Okay? Have we gained a lot since the 1800s? 161 years ago, and to the 21st century, what is our worth compared to the majority white population? If you look at the numbers, like Dr. Claude Anderson, you will see that there's reasons why, and until you understand the reason, the causations, you say, you would not be able to articulate when we say, when people talk about reparations and things like that. There is a reason why we think we need to be compensated for even those we were not enslaved, but we're dealing with the ramifications socially.
Yes. Yes.
Based on what came out of 246 years of enslavement.
Well, those numbers are important, and the thing that I feel he illuminates is that he shows that when you take a people and you bring them and you take all of the things that qualify us as a culture.
As any human being on the planet Earth.
Absolutely. And then all of those systems, economics, political, statutory, religion, were co-conspirators in maintaining the African American, or the African at the time, as a permanent underclass citizen. And if you don't understand that everything is linked, I call it the systems perspective. And I believe Dr. Claude Anderson does a superb job in showing how everything is connected. If you think of a chain, those links are connected to another loop. But if we become myopic in our analysis, we only look at that one loop. We don't look at how they're all chained along. And so his works is sort of a analysis of that chain, and showing how everything is dependent, not independent, but dependent on each factor. And so that systems perspective that I see in his book, he gives explanation. He moves a curtain and sees behind it.
You see the wizard.
Absolutely.
behind the curtain.
Oh, his work is just seminal.
Yes. One of his sayings, one of the things that he's said a lot, and he's been warning us since these books been out.
Yes.
That the idea that the African American community can exercise effective power, political or otherwise, in today's society without simultaneously exercising economic power is a fantasy.
It is a fantasy.
So what we are dealing with, if we think that because we are getting jobs without ownership and without wealth, and that we're spending $1.3 trillion, okay, but if we don't own anything, because this is a capitalist system, and power comes out of ownership.
Well, you can't.
Not out of income.
That is true, and you cannot practice capitalism without capital. Okay, and we have bought into things and shiny ornaments and items that deteriorate and diminish the moment that you buy something. And so we're not wealth generators. We don't employ one another. And our principles, the things that should be germane to our survival, have been diminished by bringing in interests of other groups. And so many of the unique challenges and issues that we've had as African Americans, you need unique African American solutions.
And that's the thing that's important. One of the philosophies of Dr. Claude Anderson, he says that every institution, every system is a team sport. He uses team sport.
That's right.
Okay, you cannot do it as an individual. I don't care. Like, for example, you look at King James, right, playing basketball, right? Now, there are always going to be exceptions. We've always had black millionaires, even in the 1800s.
That's right.
One or two does not benefit the majority of the people.
No.
It's the collective. It's always been a collective system.
And that's essentially what other groups
exactly.
not only sponsor, but that is the survival base of their existence today.
It's always been a collective interest group.
Always. We are the only group that
bought
has
into that
been
mentality.
dispersed into this individualism, rugged individualism. And the reality is that in America, group power,
collective power, exactly,
is essential to getting your piece of the pie. And so if I'm chasing other people's dreams, if I'm pretending that what they have, I wasn't responsible for helping them to get. One of the things that Claude Anderson, he uses the term, he says that blacks are the oil and water of the foundation of America. And he's basically saying that America would not be America without the contributions and the building, the free labor, the cheap labor, that came for 246 years without a payday, and then another 150 years of Jim Crowism, and people want to wash that reality away. But with any group, you must continue to build on each foundation as that group establishes.
It's a stepping stone, exactly. And you just can't go up to the top floor immediately. You got to go to all the different steps, and like you said, the foundation. And the fact that you said something like that reminded me of another quote by Dr. Claude Anderson. He said that you cannot separate yourself from your history and be involved in the earning of wealth and the development of power in the present moment.
Can't do it.
If you don't have that historical foundational understanding. And with that, there was one of the slave-owning presidents, Andrew Jackson, once said that you could have all the land that you want, but it had no power. He said it didn't have power until a black body was put on that land.
Right. That's right.
That gave the land value, and what he meant was you could go and to a spot and say, I'll own this land from these trees to that mountain. Okay, but you can't grow cotton there yet. You can't grow rice. You can't develop towns until that land is cleared out and developed.
That's right.
And for 246 years, most of the great economic boom was tobacco, cotton, rice, indigo, but these were labor-intensive types of commodities, and they didn't have value until people that look like you and me were forced into that. And that means economically non-compensated, but they're people who own that land, owned the tools, took the resources, benefited, and then you had generational wealth. And that's why even to this day, if you look at many of the statistics, they say that white Americans have many times more wealth in their household than the average black family. There is a historical reason. If you just go by a statement in the present moment and you're so caught up in the present moment, you're not going to get that.
No, you're
but
not.
if you understand the history, the precedent,
Yes.
and why.
Yes.
Okay, and that's what we're going to do in this discussion. We know as we're talking based on Dr. Claude Anderson's books.
And essentially, what thus far in our discussion is what Dr. Anderson has laid down as the causative factors as to why our present situation is so dire. And if you look at the title of the book, Black Labor, White Wealth, it speaks literally
kind
to
of
the
points
issue.
to that issue. And he backs everything up statistically and historically. You cannot separate that. I can't give you a bunch of statistics without giving you a history of how those statistics came about.
Absolutely.
And how they had the effect. There's a thing called, he said that we were socially engineered into a underclass system.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
not even
Yes.
during enslavement, but after enslavement. You got to understand that. If you never, there are people called social scientists today. Okay, and they do studies and they understand how people function. Mm-hmm. And if you have when you talk about social engineering, it is a deliberate planning and how to control, develop future social behaviors.
Yes.
In a particular society. How you want your society to function, you're going to have social scientists come up with plans that would determine how this society will function. Yes. And this thing would not coincidentally, this was done by law in America to us to be a permanent underclass.
And I think that's probably the most essential point in our whole discussion, that we in fact were a planned minority.
It was a plan, exactly.
When you just ushered in the social scientists, the economists, the educational system, there was a massive collusion to ensure that this system worked. In order for it to work, all of these institutions had their specific part.
Work as a team.
Okay. And that goes back to what you were saying about the team, okay? But if your team controls those foundation entities, then you can literally make it do anything that you want. When you ensure that something as important as not being allowed to read, not having
socially engineered,
the laws,
not being able to own property.
To maintain that status quo. People just don't recognize that this was not a whimsical
Mother Nature,
project.
Nature
this
of God,
was
something that God did. No.
Planned
there
project.
Was planned social structure.
And all of those organizations and all of those institutions were part and parcel. They were guilty by implication by making sure that black people continued to be a planned minority, did not have the essential tools to create their own group power.
Miseducated.
Just the whole realm, and every social aspect of our existence, there was a concerted effort to minimize
exactly, brother,
and make sure that you continue to maintain that position as a planned minority.
We got a few minutes in this section. We can continue into the next one. We're going to do a two-part. But I wanted to do what Dr. Anderson taught us through these books. He always used history to validate.
Yes.
So this is 2021, okay? Let's go back 161 years to 1860, which is to the 1860 census. At that time, there was something like 36 million white Americans, 4 million enslaved, and maybe 170,000 so-called free blacks. Okay, free. I don't know what that term is in your conditioning, but let's look at the economics of the time. The wealth that was earned and produced prior to 1860 was the pre-Civil War slavery, 1776. 5 years after that, you had the end of the Civil War, 1314. That's when the modern, people use today. Look what happened since that. You got freed. All right, we were the wealth of the 170,000 blacks compared to the rest of the country was something like 1/2% of Americans.
1%, yes.
1/2. That means 99.5% of everything else that we considered a society wealth was owned by white Americans.
That's what it means.
All right? Let's go to 1960. We only own, 1%. So that's from 1860 to 1960, with all the things that we supposedly gained in those 100 years. We only got 0.5% of the American wealth. And if you understand, and if you own, and today, guess what we own? 2% of the American wealth as a people.
0.5%
161 years ago, we had 0.5%. White America had 99.5%. They owned everything. And when you talk about social engineering, you think after 1865 they gave up control of that power?
No, they did not. They did not.
And they had the wealth to control the politics. You had the wealth to control the labor force. You had the wealth to control the economics, the banking, the land.
Yes.
And you're going to tell us, pull us up, and then we were non-economically freed.
Yes. And then make it legal to carry out those practices.
If you control, you control the economics, you control the politics,
That's
and the
right.
politics
That's right.
do the laws, and the laws are carried out by the criminal justice system. They're called law enforcement.
That's right.
But if you don't have the economic, and you free 4 million people, and you don't economically compensate them, and you say you're free in a capitalist system, now you understand the foundation of what we're talking about, of what we have to catch up to. And we'll continue this on in the next show. We got about a little bit more than 50 seconds, but you got anything to say before we go off?
Well, again, I hope we've seen that the planned conditions of the past have also shown planned non-success of today. So it's intricately tied with the history.
And we'll continue this and bring us up to today and talk about some of these other points. But we'll start where we left off on the next show. So until you see why we love Dr. Claude Anderson and why we push these books of his. If you want to, like the old saying goes, if you want to hide it from the Negro, put it in the books. So we try to make you aware of the kind of books you need to read. So until next time, peace, hotep, and welcome back, brother.
Thank you. Get a copy of this book.